Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into a massive question. What's really the best way to run an economy? You've got the wild, creative chaos of the free market on one side, and on the other, you've got the structured, top-down authority of central planning. It's a clash of ideas that has literally shaped the world we live in, and today, we're breaking it all down.
So, to really wrap our heads around these huge concepts, let's kick things off with a super simple analogy. Picture this. It's lunchtime. Are you the kind of person who wants to go to a giant buffet with endless options, or are you okay with the classic school cafeteria line where the meal is already decided for you? That buffet, well, that's our stand-in for a market economy. You've got freedom, you've got tons of variety, and the feedback is instant. If nobody touches that weird tuna casserole, guess what? Boom, it's gone tomorrow. But the cafeteria line, that's more like central planning. Everyone gets the same thing, which you could argue creates a certain kind of equality. But your choice, it's made for you. And that simple difference is at the very heart of everything we're talking about today. All right, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with our tale of two kitchens to really understand the invisible hand versus the planners. Then we'll dive into something called the knowledge problem, which is a huge hurdle for any planner. After that, we'll look at the big trade-off, efficiency versus equity. And finally, we'll see how most modern economies try to find the right mix. Okay, first things first. Let's get our terms straight. What are we really talking about when we use these phrases free market and central planning?
So a free market economy, capitalism, is basically powered by millions of individuals and businesses all making their own decisions. They're not trying to help society, not really. They're just looking out for themselves. But as the famous economist Adam Smith put it, it's like they're all guided by an invisible hand that magically coordinates all that selfish activity into producing the stuff that people actually want and need. And on the other side, you've got a centrally planned or command economy. Here, the government is firmly in the driver's seat. A central group of planners decides everything. It's a system based on political control. Think about the old Soviet Union's famous 5-year plans, where the state literally dictated everything, from how much steel to produce to how many pairs of shoes a factory had to make.
Now, you might be thinking, okay, central planning sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, not so fast. There is a massive, almost impossible challenge that every central planner runs into, and it's a key reason why so many of these economies have historically struggled.
Let's put you in the hot seat for a second. Let's do a little thought experiment. It's 1928. You're a planner in the Soviet Union. A new railroad is critical, but there's a huge mountain range smack in the middle of where it needs to go. You've got two choices: build through it or build around it. What do? Okay, so if you tunnel through the mountain, you save a ton of steel. That steel that's desperately needed for hospitals, tractors, you name it. But this will tie up your absolute best engineers for years. Engineers who are also needed to design dams and mines. If you go around it, you save those precious engineers, but you chew through a mind-boggling amount of steel. So, as the planner, how on earth are you supposed to make the right call? To do that, you'd need to know what every single factory, every farm, and every hospital across the entire country needs most at that very moment. Is it the steel or the engineers? You can't possibly know. There's just no way to gather all that information. And that impossible dilemma is what the economist Friedrich Hayek famously called the knowledge problem. In a market economy, this problem gets solved almost automatically by prices. If steel gets really scarce, its price shoots up. That price is a signal, a piece of information that tells everyone, hey, go easy on the steel. Prices pack an incredible amount of information into a single, simple number. So if markets are so amazing at solving this knowledge problem, why would anyone ever opt for central planning? Well, it's because these systems are built to achieve very different things. And this brings us to one of the great trade-offs in all of economics: efficiency versus equity. There's no doubt free markets are absolute engines of innovation and efficiency. All that competition forces companies to get better, faster, and cheaper. Central planning, though, can aim for different goals, like making sure everyone has a baseline of resources, and it can mobilize an entire nation for a single purpose. A great example is World War II, when the US government basically ordered the entire nylon industry to stop making stockings and start making parachutes. A free market just wouldn't do that on its own. But, and this is a big but, each system has a pretty serious dark side. Markets, left totally to themselves, can create massive inequality. And central planning, without those price signals, is often incredibly inefficient. It leads to famous stories like Soviet shoe factories that got bonuses based on the number of shoes they made.
So what did they do? They churned out millions of identical, tiny shoes that were easy to make, but that nobody could actually wear, leading to shortages of everything else. And this quote really drills down to the fundamental political critique of central planning. For the plan to work, you have to make people follow it. You can't just ask a factory to make different shoes, you have to command it. So from this viewpoint, central planning isn't just about economics. It's a system that, at its core, relies on political control and limiting individual freedom to get things done. Okay, so we have these two powerful competing ideas with huge pros and cons on each side. So where does that leave us today in the real world? Because, as you know, things out here are rarely ever black and white. While the truth is, that whole fiery debate, pure free market versus pure central planning, it's pretty much an academic exercise. In reality, no country is at either extreme. Even in the very market-oriented United States, we have tons of government regulation and social programs. And even in a place like North Korea, informal black markets pop up. What nearly every country has today is what's called a mixed economy. It's an attempt, really, to get the best of both worlds. They try to harness the innovative power of the market, but then use the government to step in, provide public goods like roads and schools, and create a social safety net. It's a constant balancing act. And you know, if you want a jaw-dropping example of this in action, look no further than China. It began as a super rigid Soviet-style command economy back in the 50s. But then, starting in 1978, it began its famous reform and opening up, slowly, carefully introducing market forces. And the result? One of the most incredible economic transformations we've ever seen, all while the state still keeps a very tight grip on the whole system. So a good way to think about a typical modern economy is like this chart. It's a kind of constant negotiation. The biggest chunk, that's the private sector, driven by the market. But it all operates inside a pretty big framework of government regulation, and it's propped up by social safety nets. Now, the exact percentages of this mix change from country to country, but the basic idea, it's pretty much the global standard now. And all of this brings us right back to the huge, unanswered question for our time, because this debate is far from over. When we face massive challenges like climate change or try to manage incredibly complex technologies like AI, that old knowledge problem comes roaring back. Can governments really plan and regulate something that's changing so fast? At what point do we trust the market to figure things out? And when do we need the visible guiding hand of the state? Finding the right balance is the challenge that will define our future.